The opinions and viewpoints expressed in .NET Rocks are not necessarily those of its sponsors or of Microsoft Corporation, its partners, or employees. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, which is solely responsible for its content. Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter. Hey, Rockheads, stop watching those videos on Channel 9 and listen up. It's time for another stellar edition of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers with Carl Franklin and Rory Blythe. This is Jeff Maciolik here to announce show number 59 with guest Bob Reselman, recorded live Friday, April 9th, 2004. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter, and now offering hands-on VB.NET and ASP.NET classes remotely, online at www.franklins.net, and by Data Dynamics, makers of ActiveReports.net, simple, powerful, and cost-effective reporting for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications, online at www.datadynamics.com. Support is also provided by Code Magazine, Microsoft Technologies in-depth for IT managers and developers, online at www.code-magazine.com. And now, the developer of Franklin Daughter versions 1.0 and 2.0, Carl Franklin.
Thanks, man. Thank you. And how about it for our stand-in announcer, Jeff Maciolik? Yeah, very good. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to another incredible episode of .NET Rocks. I am Carl. I'm in New London, and I'm here with my co-host, my partner in crime, just back from the MVP Summit in Seattle with a tablet in one hand and Bomber's email address in the other. It's Rory Blythe.
A
little hungover.
Feeling good, though, about the new disclaimer. It makes me feel very official.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Now, we shall not offend.
Yeah.
So you were gone all week, and you look pretty gone right now, as a matter of fact. So the MVP Summit was this week in Seattle. I couldn't attend, actually. I'm really sorry. And, I was teaching. But you went, and you're not even an MVP, but you got invited to the summit.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a fraud.
An honorary MVP.
You could call it that, or fraud works. Yeah, I got to go in spite of the fact that I'm not an MVP, and for that I'm very thankful.
What kinds of things did you do at the MVP Summit?
Oh, boy.
Besides drink.
Right. Well, it was sort of like Scott Hanselman described it best. He said, you know what, this is like a concentrated tech ed.
So, a concentrated tech ed.
That's what he said. He said, it's like a concentrated tech ed. That's how he said it. That's why I'm saying it that way.
Did he use the hands?
Yeah, he did.
Jackie Mason
he did the Scott Hanselman sort of delivery, yeah. And he was right, I suppose. I mean, it was like a little mini conference with sessions and stuff like that. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. I feel like such a stupid jerk saying that, but
that's all right.
There's papers to sign and things like that, and I hate people who say, I don't know how much of this I can talk about, blah, 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 blah.
Right, but you're going to say it anyway.
Yeah.
So you had a little brush with greatness, I heard.
Yes. On the second day of the summit during the exec talks, I placed myself front and center when I knew that Balmer was coming out. So I was right up there in the front row, and I think I might have accidentally taken Kirk Allen Evans' seat. Kirk, if you're out there, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I saw an empty seat. There was nothing saving it. He did come up to me about 12 seconds into the talk, and he said, "You got my seat." And I thought, I didn't know I had your seat, and then he just ran off. And, I mean, I apologize, Kirk, if you were out there. I didn't mean to do it, but...
Was he saving it? I mean,
I don't know.
Is that legal?
I didn't see anything on the seat. People were saving their seats with business cards and computers and babies and whatever they had lying around.
Wow.
And there was nothing on this particular
So did Balmer
seat.
come out and say, MVPs, MVPs,
no,
MVPs?
No. He came out and he was pretty energetic.
Yeah, he always is.
Well, I think he was really happy because he had spent the previous days and hours and weeks sitting with government officials watching his company get fined and beaten for no good reason, and And I guess getting into a room with a bunch of nerds and just having a good time is a bit of a relief for someone like that. So, yeah, so near the end during the question and answer session, I threw my hand in the air and I sat there for about 10 minutes while he didn't call on me. And in the end, he said he was going to skip over me. And I argued. I was like, come on, Steve. I've had my hand up the whole time. Show me some love, man. So he eventually did call on me, and it was awesome. I got to talk to him for a while. I don't think I can say.
What did he say?
I can't say.
Oh,
That's
really?
the thing. Yeah,
you guys are under NDA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which really sucks because I would love to talk about it.
So you can't say you're under NDA.
I can't say, and I feel really cheesy saying that, especially since I'd really like to talk about it. And it's not anything that people don't already know or couldn't talk about, but it's one of those issues where you sign something that says, I won't talk about it.
Right.
I hate that. I hate that so much because I hate the jerks who just say, oh, I'd really like to tell you, but
the
I'm
fact
under
is you
NDA.
actually got to speak to him, and you did some kind of flip, kind of coy stuff. And
I
made some smart-ass remarks.
I got to be Rory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a good time.
That's so great. Yeah. And he actually singled you out. He's like, I'm going to talk to you. Just hang on a second, right?
Yeah, you did.
That's so cool.
It was pretty cool. And the rest of the summit, was the usual thing. I got to see my usual buddies, Don XML, and I got to hang out with Sam Gentile, James Avery, and just a whole list of people.
Right.
Really be too long to mention everybody, but I got to see a lot of friends and have a good time. So,
well, speaking of conferences, and particularly Tech Ed, so we had announced on a previous show that we're giving away a ticket, compliments of Microsoft, to Tech Ed, to a lucky listener. And we tried to come up with some clever way that we could give it away. We do want listeners to be online and to be listening to the live show. And we had come up with this elaborate thing, where we would give out clues.
A little too complicated.
It was really complicated. So we said, F that. We're just gonna give it away the way we give away everything on the show. But here's the deal: we're going to give it away sometime in April to a lucky listener, just like we give away the boxes of Windows Server 2003 and all that stuff. But we're not going to tell you when we're going to give it away, but we're going to give it away sometime between now and the end of April. So you have to be listening live, and there you go. Compliments of Microsoft.
This is much better than the old plan. The old plan was something like, now listen to show 22. We have inserted a letter in the 36th minute, and you have to record this letter, hold it up in the mirror, look at it, translate it into Greek, and yada, yada, yada. There was this really big, complicated puzzle. But
nobody's going to do that.
Yeah,
right?
Forget that.
Screw that. So.
Oh, and try to only enter this contest if you don't already have a ticket to Tech Ed.
That's right. If you already have a ticket to Tech Ed, sorry.
Nobody likes the jerk
win.
Who shows up and is like, I got 2 tickets, right? Nobody likes that person. So.
And we will feature you on our .NET Rocks show that we're going to do at Tech Ed, assuming that you can make it, of course.
And that you want to be on the show.
That you want to be on the show, that you want to hang out with the likes of us. Anyway, Rory, this is a time in our show when we read the email. Now, I only have one email that's worth reading.
Whoa.
I did get a couple more, but, they were less than complimentary. No, I won't say that. Just one guy went on and on and on about how about VB is the COBOL of the future, and, thanks. I'm not going to read that. So this one comes from Michael Kennedy, and it's about object spaces. We did the show on object spaces with Kevin McNish. Hey, Carl, I've been seriously listening to .NET Rocks the last month or so. I've just about listened to the more recent half of your shows. It's almost time to start at the beginning with the older ones. I really enjoyed them all. I was listening to your show with Kevin McNish about object spaces. I'm a big fan of typed data sets, so I expect object spaces will be right up my alley. I'm writing to let you know that a friend of mine, Scott Bellware, has written the best object spaces overview article I've read to date. And it's at 15seconds.com. I actually went and looked at it and read it. It's really, really good. So we put a link to it up on the page for this show. Keep on .NET rocking. Regards, Michael. And Michael, we're going to send you a .NET Rocks coffee mug just for being such a cool guy and letting us know about that. So not too much happening in the mail department today. So we now come to the point in our show when we do a segment we like to call Google Weirdos.
Weirdos, 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 weirdos,
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 Google Weirdos.
weirdos, weirdos.
And this is Rory's segment. And Rory, why don't you tell everybody what this is?
All right, just to drive the regular listeners nuts and give them this explanation again,
We're going to have to explain it on every show.
single time.
Yeah.
So get used to it.
Get used to it.
Google Weirdos is the segment that I do where I read off the Google searches that have led people or misled people to my site, neapolitan.com. A lot of these people obviously had no intention whatsoever of ever reaching my site, and that's pretty evident in some of the searches, while others had every intention of getting there. Because people who are up and familiar with Google Weirdos know that I'm going to be checking my Google referral logs, so they've actually started sending me email through Google or little messages through Google, which is pretty cool. And last week, Chris Sell suggested that people begin sending me images through Google, base64 encoded. Now, that was extremely clever, but it turns out it doesn't work. Somebody out there was trying to do it, and he just couldn't get Google to take the string. It was too long. So I typically start out with the complimentary or inflammatory, whatever they happen to be, shout-outs to me through Google.
People have actually been communicating to you through by going to Google.
Google is now my own personal one-way cheap email transport system. So the first 9 million searches this month were actually the result of my friend Jason Olson setting up a TPing of my referral logs. I don't know if anybody out there reads my blog or remembers, but a few weeks ago, Chris Sells went out of town with his family, and they went to all these amusement parks, and while he was gone, I decided to TP his comments section on his site. So there were about
TP, what does that mean?
TP, toilet papering. It's like when you're a kid and you find the teacher's house, you hate this particular teacher, you're mad at him or whatever, and you TP that.
Just to play a joke.
Yeah, you throw TP all over the house and all over the trees and everything. Or somebody like one of your friends,
Just for fun.
Sure, just for fun. Or somebody gets married, so you TP their house.
Yeah.
Or you're Chris Sells and you go on vacation and you tell everybody on your blog that you're not bringing your computer. And you know that person is wide open for a TPing. So
I thought that was funny because I went and I read Chris Sells' blog and there was 9 million comments with people going, TP, TP, TP.
Yeah, we TP'd the hell out of that thing. So Jason Olson got me back because I went off to the MVP summit and he decided to TP my Google referrals. So there were just tons in there. A lot of variations, but the general gist of it was, to Rory TP, I blame no one. And then one of them that I really liked was to Rory TP, payback's a bitch. I don't know who did that. Maybe it was Chris, but yeah.
Wow.
So there were a lot of TPs in there. That's from my friend Jason Olson out at geekswithblogs.net/JOlson. All right.
Aha.
So getting on to the other shout-outs, we've got Rory Blythe is the Google God. That's Mark Kenyon, and I got to thank you for that, Mark. My ego is bruised every week by a whole deluge of inflammatory, angry, not exactly fan mail, and it's these things that keep me going, so thank you. And moving along, we've got Google Weirdos, Google Weirdos. I hear them everywhere now, Google Weirdos. What did you put in my head now, Google Weirdos? I think you can see it now, Google Weirdos. I am a Google Weirdo now. Yeah, you are. Yep. Here's a good one. Rory Blythe, your minions are ready. I like that. An army of minions, all just for me. And here's one from Google. Rory, this is Google. Stop using me for email. So, that's pretty good. And now here's the most complex Google Weirdos shout-out I've ever gotten from anybody ever. This is a 5-part search.
Oh, my God.
And the person numbered them. So they start with 1/5, and then it goes on to 2/5 and 3/5. So this is a very clever person here. So 1, this is the .NET story of Carl and Rory. 2, they produce .NET shows with a segment called Google Weirdos. 3, we listen to .NET Rocks every week to hear Rory Blythe being a funny geek. 4, I hope you all agree this should belong to Google Weirdos history. 5, P.S. Carl, I, like Rory, am a C# developer and my hair couldn't be any better.
Okay.
So, got a little message to you out there too.
Good.
So that's the end of the shout-outs. Now I move on to the true weirdos.
True weirdos.
These are the people who are not trying to get a hold of me and who wish they never had. And sometimes they're not too weird and I have to embellish or I have to kind of add my own color or I'll create a theme. You'll just you'll
but
get
the
the hang
key
of
is
it
they
here.
didn't intend to land on your website.
Exactly.
They did. They were looking for something else and they bumped into you.
Yeah. So the first one is just say no to piss test projects. And I just wanted to agree with that. I find nothing more humiliating or offensive than having to take a drug test before a job. I've had to do it a couple times in my life and I just can't stand it. I'm totally drug-free. You probably don't believe it, but I am totally drug-free except for the occasional drink. And I just don't like the idea that somebody would even want to hire me if they suspected that I wasn't going to be able to do the job. And
I also, by the way, am drug-free. I don't
we're all
do drugs.
It's kind of hard to believe, but yeah. So the next one
Especially after hearing that Weirdos theme.
The next one is stripped and cavity search. And I just wanted to say that this is where it's going to go if we don't start saying no to piss tests. All right? Then here's a Google weirdo. We got pimples, pics, gross, best. All right,
What?
so maybe piss testing isn't all that bad, right?
So somebody entered in those 4 search terms into Google. Pimples.
No, it's one search. Yeah, that's exactly
Okay.
right. This is a phrase, basically.
Right.
Pimples, pics, gross, best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Moving along. We've got, how do you...
I don't even want to imagine what they were looking for.
Right. Well, they didn't find it on my site.
Apparently.
So here's one. How do you remove an older version of Messenger? I tell you what, here's what you do, okay? You paying attention? Here's what you do. Take your computer out back, cover it in gasoline, light it on fire, and bury the ashes, all right? If Messenger still isn't gone, then get in contact with me directly, and I'll get you in touch with a voodoo priest I know.
I like this one. You try to close Messenger while Outlook 2003 is open, and
Good
it
luck,
says,
my friend.
"Oh no, you can't do
Good
that."
luck. Yeah. And if you don't uninstall it, it just happily reinstalls itself.
Yeah.
It's a tough piece of software.
Yeah.
Voodoo, my friend. That is the only way. Here's another one. Rats, opposable thumbs, human intelligence.
Ooh,
I mean, this is like a mad scientist in the making.
rats, opposable thumbs, human intelligence.
Are the rats with the opposable thumbs and human intelligence ready yet? Yep. Yeah, they're coming. Here's another one. Dentist pain while drilling. Now, that's a nice little change there, isn't it? The dentist gets the pain instead. I like that.
Very good.
That's a good deal.
I think we should definitely endorse that.
I don't know how you do that, but maybe reach out and squeeze. Anyway, so how to compile ASP.NET project. I like to use the compiler myself. I find that usually works.
And you generally don't. You don't have to do any of that. You just hit the site and it compiles.
Although, I mean, if you have all your code behind and you have all this
code
and you have all
behind,
that,
you have to compile,
then you compile. I would never put together an ASP.NET
I would
site
just
without code
generally
behind.
press F5. That works.
It's a good way to do it. So use the compiler. That's my big tech tip for you today.
Lobster DK says, "Kick the dentist in the nads."
Right. That's a good way to. That's probably from the chat room. That's a good way to hurt your dentist. Unless your dentist is a woman, like mine, actually. Although she's really nice.
Okay.
Moving along. All right, we've got lick cheese of toes.
Oh God! I just ate lunch too. Don't do that to me, man.
Yeah,
That's
I didn't know.
disgusting.
Not my idea.
That is, you can't say that. That's just gross.
Moving on, we've got why is my microwave humming? You know, I don't know, but have you seen Poltergeist? Have you seen the movie Poltergeist? I don't know why your microwave is humming, but I got some ideas. I like this one. This is not a search. This is someone who was just really happy and wanted to share a little bit of news, but didn't know where to do it. It's just, I got $5,000. I got $5,000. That's a cool Google search. If I got $5,000, I'd probably do that too. Moving on, we've got my drawings while on peyote.
Ooh.
Yeah, you Googled for him because you forgot where you left them,
I was
didn't you?
going to say, why is he looking for my drawings?
You don't know where they are, do you? Yep. Moving along, this complements the lick cheese of toes. We've got cow testicles for dinner.
Okay, Roy, I want to know what matched on your site.
I don't want to know what matched
cow
on my site.
Cow testicles for dinner.
I mean, everybody has their hobbies, and some of these posts just slip by, and I'm sure it's in there somewhere. Moving on,
God.
we've got science labs and bananas.
Hmm.
I don't know what's going on in there. Moving on, we've got seal dinner.
Oh.
Maybe you can hang out with the guy who's eating all the cow testicles. You'd have a real nice potluck.
I'd like a Seal Club sandwich, please.
With a side of cow testicles for dinner. And there's a real dinner theme here, because we've also got ponchos for dinner. At my place, we just eat socks and underwear.
Yeah. We don't go for the ponchos. They're too slippery.
Then lastly, there's a bad word in this one. All right, so are you ready? I'm giving you ample warning here in case you're at work and you're listening
Put the
like
kids
on the
to bed.
PA or something. Get ready, everybody. Hide your ears. It's going to be the SH word, all right? So here we go. Here's the bad word. Splenda, which is, of course, an artificial sweetener. Splenda makes your shit sweet. How do you know? How do you know that?
Good Lord!
How do you know?
You can't say that, man.
I mean, the first question is, why do you care? And the second is, how do you know?
Yes, this is
That is a
insane.
weirdo. That is an
a
honest
serious,
to God weirdo.
serious weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is Google Weirdos for the week.
Weirdos.
Weirdos. So, Rory, our guest today is an old friend of mine and an incredibly talented author and developer in his own right, Bob Reselman. And he has written this book called Coding Slave that claims the software industry doesn't want you to read it. And I have a copy of it right here. It looks like it's bound like a manual, a computer manual with a comb binding, and it's like this all black front that has what do they call that? Just like typewriter font.
Sure, it actually looks like the manual for my Timex Sinclair 1000.
Yeah, and it's small.
Except
it's not
thicker.
Yeah, it's about a 3/4 of an inch thick, and I don't know, 9 inches long or something like that. I don't know what sounds like I'm describing, but I just wanted to give you the impression that it's smaller than your average book in size. Apparently, doesn't matter.
I like that.
Yeah,
actually, I like the idea of the novella more than the novel. I mean, running something down to around 150, 100 pages.
Yeah.
That's good for the lifestyle of the coder because a lot of us don't have time to sit and read War and Peace.
Absolutely. And this is it's a novel called Coding Slave. I'm going to let him introduce the book and talk about the book. But let me introduce Bob. Bob is a software developer and technology writer who's been making code and writing about code since before Java and as far back as VB version 1.0. Bob is author of the just released novel Coding Slave. He's also the author of 4 books on computer programming, including Active Server Pages 3.0 by Example and Practical Visual Basic. Bob is an ongoing contributor to Informit.com, and a new contributor to Ziff Davis's DevSource. Bob is the former chief technology officer of AWallStreet.com, former principal consultant with Capgemini, and former platform architect for the computer manufacturer Gateway. For a while, in the not-too-distant past, he was playing bass in an R&B band in southern Austria. Bob presently lives in Los Angeles near the beach. Won't you please welcome Bob Reselman?
Hey, Carl, thanks.
Hey, all right. How are you?
Dude.
Dude, hanging out at the beach.
Yeah, about 100 yards away.
How long have you lived in the beach? On the beach?
I came here in May.
Wow.
I came here in May, man.
From where?
New York.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I remember you sort of used to hang out with the old Crescent Software gang and the VBits gang. And
yeah, that's up when I was up in Boston. I mean, I sound like I'm on the lam here.
Right.
Yeah, I was in Europe for a while. And as I said, living in Austria, playing in a band. And it was time to come back. And as we all know, not a lot's happening in New York these days. So here I am in L.A.
Right. So, I remember you from the olden days, and you got in contact with me about this book, and you sent me a copy, and I tell you, it was an engrossing book. I didn't really realize it was a novel until, I was reading a bit into it, and, the sex kind of gave it away. I was like, this is not a commentary.
This is fiction, right?
Yeah.
Software development and sex.
Everybody
Definitely
likes
fiction.
the sex. Yeah, it's something about the sex they like.
Right, but you're talking from a developer's point of view. This is a novel about coders, and in it you have references to things that only coders are privy to, the kinds of people you meet in the conferences that you go to and about coding and software development in the process. So it's really like a novel for us.
Yeah, it's a novel for us, and actually, I wrote it so my father could understand it.
Right.
He was one of my beta testers.
I was going to say that. You do a very good job of
testers.
explaining to the outside world, as you say, what the inside is all about.
Yeah, thanks.
So tell us what this book is about. I mean, from the person who doesn't know anything about it, if you want to explain it in the elevator, what would you say?
The book is about a young lady who is an Indian contract programmer who comes to the United States and gets involved in an ERP implementation, and through that implementation, the whole world changes.
Now define ERP.
Enterprise Resource Package, SAP, Bond, Oracle, Financials, all those big software companies software packages that make the big software companies go.
Okay.
Or like, geez, like for example, I think actually SAP runs Microsoft now. And I know they do GM. I know
Not the other way around.
Excuse me?
Not the other way around.
No,
Microsoft doesn't run
not the other way around.
SAP.
Yeah.
SAP runs Microsoft.
SAP runs. I could be wrong. I don't know what ERP. Maybe they've come up with their own right now. But ERPs are, they're very big packages. They cost about $10 million, and they're made to run the world.
All right. So it's about this young woman, and her name has a striking resemblance to a condition of heartburn. Was that on purpose?
No, actually not.
Ajita is her name, right?
Right, the name of it, Ajita Ortamawani.
Right. And so when I first read that, I read it Ajita.
Yeah. Ajita, yeah. Ajita, yeah. Ajita's a big one.
Anyway, so it's about her.
Mm-hmm. And anymore, I'd be giving it away, and then people wouldn't buy the book, and then they'd want to download it
That's not enough,
online.
though. I mean, that's not enough.
Right.
You're going to have to give a little bit here.
Well, okay. Let's do. Ask a specific question. I'll give you a specific answer.
Okay, what's it about?
It's about a young Indian contract programmer woman who comes over to the United States.
What's her name, though?
Ajita. Her name is Ajita.
Okay, we're going to take some callers for Bob Reselman right now. If you got any questions
at all.
She
goes to work on an ERP implementation in a Midwestern agri-conglomerate, and through the ERP implementation, the whole world changes.
Okay.
You want to define ERP for everybody?
An ERP is an exercise. Yeah.
All right.
Actually, it's in the glossary.
Come on.
Right, the book does ship with other software. I need to say that. The book is modeled after a piece of software. Actually, the book is software. It was designed to be software. The whole development process was that which you would do as a software developer.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a whole alpha period and a beta period, and I had people read it and get back to me. I even bundle a piece of other software with it. I ship one of the Platonic dialogues, the Menno, with the book at no charge to the consumer.
Plato.
Well,
Plato.
Yeah.
Yes, Plato, the Menno. The Menno is really about, it's about many things, but one of the questions Socrates asks Menno, or some people call it Meno, is what's the best way to train physicians? Do we send them to teachers, or do we send them to the other physicians? And so I think the more appropriate question is, maybe not appropriate, but why'd you write the book, or tell me about the history behind the book.
That's where I'm sort of going, Bob. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah, that's where I'm sort of going.
Because this is kind of an unusual deal, right?
It is.
A developer who has written a novel. I mean, I've been working on this myself, and I'm really jealous, and there's a bit of spite in me because you accomplished it, but I mean, I'd love to hear about the process. Because this is an unusual thing.
Let's have you answer the question about why you wrote it in the first place.
I wrote the book because I had to. It's like, why do people, go down in a basement for 3 weeks and write this code that maybe 6 people in the universe will use, and then come up afterwards and felt like they've done something? It's because you have to. After a while, as a developer, the people I know who are really truly gifted, and there are many of them, they code because they gotta.
Yeah.
They don't really have a choice anymore.
Yeah.
And actually, in chapter 25 of the book, I talk about that, which is Rafael's affair, about just coding because you got it. There's this character in the book called Rafael Martinez, who's he works. His parents work on the meat line. The conglomerate owns a meat packing factory, and he finally gets a job coding, getting paid to code.
Yeah. And
it's about his whole transformation of going through the coding process of actually becoming a professional coder. But regardless, he has to code, and there becomes a point in life where things transpire in the book where he no longer needs to make money, and he still finds himself that he's got to code,
right?
And he still finds himself subjected to the joys and their stresses of having to code.
You know what's funny about that?
What?
Is I've been thinking that I want to retire early so that I can sit around and just code whatever I want.
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, you hit on something there.
Yeah, it's like Alexander the Great said, my only worry in life is that there'll be no more countries left to conquer. Like I worry about that. There'll be no more code left to write.
Right.
That's that's a big fear for me.
I tell you, Bob, I really had to restrain myself from trying to figure out what your point was, which is always something that you should do when you read a novel. Don't try to make sense out of it. Just read and enjoy the book, and it'll become obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was reading the very first prologue, and I'll read this here, which it just startled me. It was like a slap in the face, and I just had to keep reading. This is the prologue of Coding Slave. Quote, "F*** 'em. Send the code to India." End quote. A momentary silence filled the room as the impact of her statement settled on the faces that surrounded the table. Walt, the face closest to her, spoke. "Catherine, do you know what you're saying? This is not New York or the Bay Area or even Austin. This is the deep Midwest. People are going to get more than a little upset at the idea of putting high-paying American programmers out of work and sending their jobs off to India, of all places. This is going to piss off a lot of people. Programmers are not the only ones that are going to feel the impact. These guys don't make minimum wage. They make real money, and they spend it here. We're talking about classic trickle-down, Catherine. This will set a real precedent. A quarter of the people in this town are involved in some sort of technology work. This is going to hurt an awful lot of people." Walt's comment provoked Catherine. She had not slept for the past 2 nights and was beginning to show the irritability that accompanies sleep deprivation. "Walt, that goddamn system controls us. This has got to change. The only module that is working is payroll. Not the general ledger, not inventory, not purchasing, not sales, not HR, just payroll. Walt, we have just spent $5.2 million for a fucking payroll module that I could have bought from QuickBooks for $99. This is unbelievable. We have a horde of programmers downstairs doing God knows what at an astronomical burn rate, and all we have is fucking payroll. That goddamn system is supposed to help us be more competitive, not drive us into bankruptcy." Catherine realized that she was losing control. She was using profanity out of anger and frustration rather than to make a point. This was a sure sign that sleep deprivation was setting in. "You want to keep the jobs here and still bring the implementation in on budget, Walt? Tell you what, get everybody at this table to take a 30% cut in salary for starters. Get that to happen, Walt, and we have the beginning of something to talk about." The other faces around the table looked to Walt. Walt was about to say something and then stopped. He looked down and began to scribble on his yellow legal-sized notepad. "Sorry, Catherine," he said. "This is a bit of a shock. It's going to take some getting used to." The faces looked away from Walt and started to scribble too, as if the scribbling fairy had visited Walt first, then one by one cast a spell upon each of them, allowing them to share threads from a common well of single thought. Each face scribbled away in his own handwriting, contributing to the common current event to which he would be party and to which he would make every effort to avoid responsibility. The decision had been made, and Catherine Limeleaf was just the one to make it. This was not her first implementation. She had suffered sleepless nights before. All she had to do was to get the burn rate down, she thought to herself. Then I'll sleep again. C1 ERP, you've seen them all.
Carl Franklin, everybody, audiobook performance artist.
Really, Carl, you can do the audio version, man. Great.
I feel like we've got one of those old radio serials going on now.
Yeah.
Tune in next week with your Orphan Annie Decoder ring.
Well, that's a pretty awesome way to start a book. I mean,
that is something.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
the scary thing is how not terribly fiction that was.
No.
Actually.
Yeah, it isn't, right. Yeah. As you know, the book begins, all characters in this book are fictitious, the situation's less so.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how it is. And I don't know about you, but I've sat in more than one situation where money was actually burning out the window.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's very, very common.
Excuse me?
It's very common. You get a lot of people who don't know what they're doing or who don't necessarily care about their jobs that much, and you do wind up with situations where all we've got is the bleeping, system, yada, 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 and we're throwing money out the window, right?
There's certain realities about a business, and that is if it's not paying for itself, then it doesn't exist.
Right.
And, as a business owner, I see both sides of that coin. I see the side that says, well, you got to take care of your employees and you got to do what's right by them. But I see the other side that is if I throw money at them without having them produce something that can bring that money back, then eventually they're going to not be able to pay for themselves, basically.
Yeah, Carl, allow me to disagree with you.
All right, sure.
Yeah, your business, and I have great respect for your business. I've always had great respect for what you do. It takes a lot of guts to get up in the morning and actually try to make it in the world. Is based on pretty much, here's my service, I sell it, and I get some money for it. Or here's my product, and I sell it, and I get some money for it. And actually, it's a resale model.
Right.
That's only one model.
Sure.
There's another model that says, which was really fueled in my experience, the dot-com bubble, which says, look, revenue is really not important. It's really valuation. And when you have companies out there that are publicly traded, it's really about what's their perceived value. So if I take, let's say, $6 million, and let's say I get 5 of my friends together, and we put together a company for $30 million, and there are people out there that do that, and we have a company that's now valued at day one at $30 million in capital equity.
Yeah.
Now, if we can actually get this company going for a year or two and make it go public, and then recapitalize it for another $150 million.
I guess the difference is I was talking about business. You're talking about thievery, which is...
No, I'm talking about business.
Well, no. And I mean that to support your point. I mean, the corporations that went into this .com craze, and, they were all about trying to make big stock money and then cash out and steal it, basically.
Right, and there's other examples presently now. Look at, I'm more ignorant than I'd like to be, but SCO is probably a very good example of, somebody profiting. The whole point of, to my understanding, of the whole SCO suit is potential profit from litigation.
Right.
So it's not gone away.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's there every day. It takes a lot of money to keep our economy going.
Right.
The idea, how many, I've done pitches where I say, look, I need $1 million. And they say, what do we get back? I say, well, you get back $20 million. And they say to me, that's not enough. It's too small.
Yeah.
And that's common. People want to know if, the deal is big enough for them.
That's insane.
Well, it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, in my world, I'm a small business and I have a very direct relationship to the business model. Mm-hmm. And if I don't generate revenue, the people that are working don't get paid. And that's just a very real reality for me.
Oh, it is. And it's very, and it's one of the reasons, not the reasons, but one of the things I enjoy about LA and I enjoy about New York is that business model is still viable here. Right. It's no longer really viable in other parts of the country. For example, if you want to open a taco stand in, Great America Mall someplace.
Yeah, anywhere. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah, try it. Can't do it.
Can't do it.
Those days are well over. So really, a lot of those the book doesn't talk directly about that. I'm really concerned more about the plight of programmers and why this insanity is happening.
Right.
And, the easy thing to say, well, it's thievery, but, there's a real fundamental reason, I think, to look at what's making this happen.
Okay.
Because we're all, I hate to use that, either we're part of the problem or a part of the solution. So pick a side.
Well, I want to read another part from all jumping.
Real quick, Carl, before you do that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a question that's going to make me sound a little naive here?
Sure.
Because, we don't usually get to have this sort of discussion on the show, and I'm actually pretty interested, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are too. Yeah. So you get in front of people, and you're asking for $1 million, and they're saying, what we're going to get back, and you say $20 million, they say that's not enough. Is it because they're expecting you to fall short of that goal, and they want to make sure that you come back saying, well, I can get you back $60 million, just so that they will get back that $20 million?
No, it's not even about that. It's about that it's just not big enough to interest them or to interest their equity position.
Wow. Okay.
I had a friend who actually was in. This is not about software. He actually did pharmaceuticals, and he put together a consortium to buy out actually brand names of pharmaceuticals. They own the brand, and they wanted to. They wanted to purchase the brand names and then redistribute them under their own manufacturing factory someplace in the world. And they went to a very big investment bank, which I won't name here, but is in New York and is down on Wall Street, and they presented the plan. They had 15 minutes to present the plan.
Right.
And they just said, it's just not big enough. What are we going to do? We're going to get, $60 million? Our portfolio is, $4 billion.
Right. So
what do we care about that?
Yeah, what's it worth?
Yeah.
Can I also say real quick to anybody who's out there saying, what does this have to do with .NET? Probably your job. Right. This is stuff that matters to absolutely everybody, especially right now in the tight economy. Right.
Yeah,
I'd like to understand this stuff better myself, which is why I'm glad we're having this discussion.
Yeah, I am too. Believe me, I love to code. I can code. I've done it for years, but it was really about a part where you just see this stuff. I've done Big Six Consulting. I worked for Gateway, and we all know their history.
Right.
And I'm still in love with the company. Those are some of the greatest people I've ever worked with in my life.
Yeah, you love to code, and you want to continue to code, which is why you want to understand why certain decisions are made that might cut you out of your job.
Yeah.
Or you cut you out of your job.
Exactly. No, that's a good
Yeah.
point, because I've seen situations where, I'll look at somebody and I'll think, you should just be outsourced, buddy.
Right.
You're just coming in, you're not doing anything, you're sitting there, you got your feet up on the desk, and you expect everything to just come to you, and you think the world owes you a favor.
Right.
Why should you be getting paid to do this when there is somebody in India who is perfectly willing to do the job and wants to do it and is happy to have it?
Yeah.
Nobody owes anybody anything on this planet. You have to work to get things, right?
Yeah,
you have to make yourself valuable.
But I think, there's many sides to this issue, and I think one side that you bring up quite profoundly in the book, Bob, is that what are we working for? I mean, who are we working for, and for what purpose? And the whole idea of being a coding slave, that you go to work, you're a slave to your system that you're coding for. You're not coding because you love it. You're coding because here's the spec and here's when it has to be done. And there's no joy in it. And what are you doing? You're building.
Well, if there is a spec.
Yeah. And you're building an automation system so somebody else with no brain can push a button and make money, right?
Yeah. I have two comments. I want to comment on something that Rory said, which is cool, and then I want to actually, I forgot what the second comment is. I'm just so into the conversation, but I can do the first one, and actually the second one. The first comment is really about, I don't have a problem with outsourcing. I mean, I'm not going to bed at night and seeing it as a justly unfair situation. Right. I see it as as an example of the unification of the planet.
Okay.
And the planet's unifying. It's been doing it since Columbus got in the water, and now we're just seeing it at accelerated rates. My theory is that India is really not the place where it's going to end up.
Right, Southeast Asia, right?
Yeah, you got it. Actually, I'm looking at China pretty hardcore.
I just use India as the general blanket example, even though they're losing a lot of work to outsourcing themselves. So to offshoring.
And it's gonna happen. I mean, as the economy grows, they're going to demand more money. Just
a friend of mine has a theory that actually it's going to head over to China, and they're going to get all the work, and our economy is going to go to crap, and eventually China's going to offshore to us.
Yeah, right. That's very possible, because it's the generations are coming.
Right.
The second comment, which is now coming back to me, is I wanted to I just released an article, a little ruthless self-promotion here out on Informant, called Charlemagne Scribes, which is really an adaptation of Chapter 26.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to read from next, actually.
Yeah. Feel free to do, or you can go ahead and get. But what I wanted to talk about about Charlemagne's time was really about the coders at that time. See, we think we're coders, like we're brand new guys on the planet. Well, we're not.
We're the same old ditch diggers and bricklayers and
the
infrastructure builders.
auto mechanics of the 21st
That's what we are.
century.
We're wrench
I tend
turners.
to look at it much differently than that, dramatically differently, Rory. I look at it as we're the people that rule the world.
Well, that's
we just don't know it.
We just don't know it, right?
Yeah, so in the article I talk about, and actually in the book, there, Charlemagne, people look at Charlemagne. The guy ran Europe. He owned Europe. Pretty much all of Central and Western Europe was under his domain. He was the king of that part of the world. Right. And he was illiterate. He couldn't read or write.
So I'm historically ignorant, but did he just control some communications channel, or did he control...
Well, that's a good question. What he did is he didn't control the communications channel at all. That was controlled by his scribes and his messengers.
And he controlled the scribes and messengers, and
the church controlled the scribes and messengers.
All right, okay. I told you I was ignorant.
Right, but the church had huge, I lose my words here, interest in making sure that Charlemagne was in charge, because they needed to unify the planet.
So the scribes were his technology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the scribes didn't know. They thought they were doing the work of God for some whatever reason, but they didn't really understand how powerful they were, that all they really had to do was rewrite a couple notes and the face of history could be changed.
Right.
So you're saying I should send all the data to the trash bin or something like that?
Something like that.
Let me read.
I see what you mean, though.
Let me read the paragraph that illustrates that. This is where Ajita is addressing, doing a keynote at a conference, which bears a striking resemblance to V-Bits, I thought. I have no idea if you meant anyone.
Less so, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be any conference. But anyway, she's the keynote speaker, and she gets up there and talks about Charlemagne, and you're basically speaking through her character here. Am I correct?
She's speaking through her character. It's very important that Ajita do it.
Okay.
I have a different take.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, this is what she says. Quote, I am sure that some of you, dear colleagues, think that I'm exaggerating our role as the rulers of the world. and the degree of our impact on the world at large. But think about it, please. The President of the United States can push all the buttons on the console of any Star Wars machine of his choosing, as hard as his mighty fingers will allow, but if the poor coder at Raytheon or Lockheed Martin, who wrote the software for missile tracking systems, was distracted in love chat the night he was supposed to be programming the shoot the thing down function, the president might well find himself annihilating a 747 full of tourists on their way to see Shamu instead of an evil intercontinental ballistic missile on its way to Toledo, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up the point.
Yep, that's it. And so, there's no victims here. I mean, it's easy to say, well, I'm being outsourced, or, the company's doing something to me, or X, Y, or if only I was smarter, or if I was richer, but there are no victims.
Right.
We're making the world we want.
And what is that world? I mean, there's another, on the next page, basically, you're basically talking about, is this a world that we want to live in? Because what's happening to us as coding slaves is, quote, we have abdicated our responsibilities. We've become nothing more than slave laborers building modern-day pyramids, glorifying the vanity of pharaohs instead of the greatness of mankind. We isolate ourselves in stall-like cubicles away from sunlight and make code that has marginal personal value. We are lonely, angry, and scared. We sit alone looking to our code for companionship and meaning, and what we really desire is the warmth and closeness of another human being, and still we code alone. That's pretty preachy.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. Been there, done that.
It's interesting, though, what you were saying about the idea that we're making the world we want.
Yeah.
Right? And a little tangential here, but this is the argument that I have about Michael Jackson, to a certain extent, or about Madonna, or about Britney Spears, right? People complain about this stuff that's showing up in the media, and about the mess, and about the horrible things that happen, but we create these people, right? Michael Jackson was cultivated from birth to be whatever we wanted him to be, and we built like a monster. It's like a Frankenstein story. I mean, he was in the public eye, and we molded him, we shaped him, we cheered him on when he did the things that were weird and freaky, and now he's gotten a little too weird and freaky, and we don't like it anymore. And I guess the same thing happens.
I don't think
with
we
coding.
cheered him on when he adopted a monkey or bought the bones of the. I mean, he was pretty much.
I thought the monkey buying was kind of cool.
He pretty much was out there before that.
The interesting question becomes, Rory, what you said is, I like the statement, we don't like him anymore. So the question that comes to my mind is, well, then, how do we define like behavior? And I don't mean similar, I mean attractive behavior.
Right.
And my thinking is anything we give attention to, we like.
Sure, yeah.
So even though we might be uncomfortable with him or mad at Michael or disappointed or completely confused, we're still giving the guy attention.
Right.
It's like a car accident, right? You stop and you look. You don't necessarily like it or you don't want to stop, but there it is.
Yeah, like we don't really like the gladiators. It's pretty horrible throwing the Christians in with those lions and watching all that maiming, but we'll still fill the stadium.
Yeah.
Now there's an interesting.
And
the interesting thing is Noam Chomsky's position. I need to share just a little bit of personal history in the sense that I wrote the book in Greece. I was on the island of Kos after 9/11. After 9/11, I was in New York, and I was busy being, a rich executive at the time. And 9/11 sort of woke me up.
Yeah.
And I left the country for a while, and I ended up in Greece.
New York, Austria, Greece. You jet-setting bastard.
Yeah. It's and it really, I really tried to understand what was going on.
Huh.
I really did want to understand what was going on, and I read a video. I saw a video by a guy, Noam Chomsky. He's pretty radical, out there guy. Right. But he has a very interesting idea. His idea goes like this: that most people can only think about one thing at one time. I've tried to think about two things at one time, and it's very hard for me. And I'd really like to meet somebody who can do that, but I can't. And he says, well, if you can only think about one thing at one time, what are you thinking about? And he talked about baseball, and I'm a big baseball fan. I mean, I love Fenway Park. Hopefully, I have wonderful memories of every time I've ever sat in, a seat there. But he says, I was thinking about baseball, and he says, I don't really know anybody on the team. None of the people there are my friends. None of the people I know have friends who are on the team. And yet, I find myself giving large amounts of attention to this thing called baseball. So what's the social benefit? or the political benefit of doing this? Well, if you're thinking about baseball, guess what you're not thinking about?
Work and 9/11 and problems.
Right, or
Sure.
what am I doing here? You know,
Right.
I'm one of the most, as a coder, I'm one of the most powerful people in the universe,
Yeah.
right? And what am I doing here?
Escaping.
I don't know.
That's interesting, though. Did you were thinking about all this in Greece and reading about this in Greece?
Yeah, I was
So-
thinking.
so
I was thinking about it in Greece. Yeah.
Did you go to Greece kind of because you wanted to get perspective? Because you couldn't really think about the thing when you were right in the middle of it, and you wanted to get outside and be able to look on it? like, with
Rory's
a bird's eye
projecting
view?
right now, basically.
Yeah, well, I recommend it. Actually, I wanted to. One of my big desires in life is I always want to go to Istanbul.
Okay, all right.
And I went to get to Istanbul. You can go from the Greek islands and take a boat across, and then a bus up into Istanbul. And at that time, I realized I understood nothing about Islam. None of this was making sense to me. I'd never been in a mosque,
Yeah.
you know, and I wanted to find a country where I felt somewhat safe.
Many
But that was
Americans
authentic Islam.
are in the
you know?
same boat, I think. Many Americans are in the same boat.
Yeah,
We don't
and
even
I was actually
consider them.
I spent a lot of time in the mosques in Istanbul, and it was just a wonderful experience. I mean, just musically alone. I mean, one of the things I like about your show is the amount of music you do. It was just an amazing musical experience because all the
thank you.
prayers are sung.
Right, the Quran is sung. And,
Yeah,
Right.
and it's just gorgeous. Oh,
Yeah, it
and
really
I'm saying, you know, and then of course you get the guys trying to sell your carpets outside, but you also understand
Well, you get that in
it's-
every
What?
city. You get that in every city, though.
If it's
Not
not carpets,
in the-
if it's not carpets, it's a piece of the cross or the crown of thorns, you know, or
Yeah.
something. I mean, somebody will sell you something somewhere.
Or a hollowed out VCR or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Now the sad part is in Istanbul, nobody's in the mosques. I mean, Istanbul is still it's a Western country. It doesn't really have the focus on Islam that other parts of the world do, to my understanding. But it was just a wonderful experience. So I started writing it there. And then, the big decision, you asked me about what the big decision is that this was really a book that was written at a part of my life which I was going through a lot of understanding about me and a lot of understanding about the world about me. And the question I asked myself is, do I really have the courage to write what I think needs to be written?
Mm.
Do I really have the courage to write the code that needs to be written?
You know what you are? You're
No, tell me.
you're a part-time coder sociologist. And I think that's fascinating because if you think about it, there really is a huge culture, a huge coding subculture that we tend to not address because we're too busy talking about ASP.NET versus JSP or servlets or whatever, and we don't really talk about all the social impacts of coding. We don't really.
Well, you and I do.
Well, we do, sure, off the air.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah,
the point is all that. What I'm finding is all that off-the-air conversation.
Yeah, that's the interesting stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we also need to know about what I call the syntax of language. Language is broken into two parts, and I talk about it in the book actually. Syntax and semantics, right? And syntax is how the language works, and semantics is what the language means. And as coders, we spend 85% of our time talking about the syntax.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's cool because without syntax, you don't have language.
At the PDC, Scott Hanselman and I sat down in the bar of the West, and we started talking about mythology and history and Joseph Campbell and Star Wars and all this other stuff, and applying the sort of the mythical motifs or the Jungian archetypes to languages and code and operating systems. Anyway, I looked up and 3 hours had gone by, and I'm like, this is
Right.
why I came out here, not to talk about, angle brackets versus wordiness or something, but
right, or colons at the end. Do I feel like a real man if I have colons at the end of the statement,
Exactly. Well, anyway.
Wait, real quick before we go to the break. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that this is going to sound like a plug, and it's not. But as soon as the show's over, I'm going to steal Carl's copy of Coding Slave, and I'm heading off to the cafe. Because, I mean, I saw the book, and I'd read it, and I thought, this is interesting. But, actually talking to you is basically selling me on it. So,
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a
Actually,
great
you can
book.
go out to the website. Let me put my plug in, www.codingslave.com, and I'll watch the numbers go into the millions. And you can read 7 sample chapters that are out there.
You going to have an audiobook?
Yeah, Carl, let's talk about it. You got it
cool.
down.
There you go.
You
We'll
could
talk.
do
You
an
do a
audio. You
chapter
could
a
really
week,
do an
you know?
audiobook. The book is just about the right size.
Sure.
You could actually do an MP3 version of this, and people could listen to it while at work or on their way to work.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, the book is actually, I designed the book ergonomically. It is ergonomically designed. It's meant to be read on the subway or in the bathroom. because I know that people have hard time sitting down and reading novels unless you're a dedicated novel reader. But it's designed to be read quickly and efficiently and to be learned and enjoyed.
Well, cool.
Awesome. Well, Bob, sit tight. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after this musical interlude with a caller or two. Stick around.
Yep.
Oh, yes, got them. Well, let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Just let the rain drive right on, let the waves just sweep along. Yes, I got them deep river blues. Now my old gal, she's a good old pal. She looks just like a waterfowl when I get them deep river blues. I ain't no one to cry for me, and the fish all go out on a spree when I get them deep river blues. Just giving me back my old boat, I'm gonna sail her if she'll float, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Yeah, I'm going back to muscle shows, times are better there I'm told, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Now let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Just let that rain drive right on, let the waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Now if my boat sinks with me, I'll go down, don't you see, 'cause I got them deep river blues. And now I'm gonna say goodbye, and if I sink, just let me die, 'cause I got them deep river blues. So let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Let the rain just drive right on, let the waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Yes. Hey, Carl Franklin here, giving a shout out to my friends at Data Dynamics. We've talked a lot about Active Reports on this show, and this is no exception. So I'm talking about ActiveReports.net. This is a port of their popular Active Reports program. If you're currently thinking of doing reporting in .net for Windows Forms or web applications, check out Active Reports for .net. Many of my friends in the business use and swear by ActiveReports.net. I use it as well. Now, let me just tell you, to say that the reporting is simple does it an injustice, because it makes you think that it can only do simple things. It can do very powerful things, but you don't have to go through hoops just to set up a simple report. When you create a report, the report exists with your application, okay? It doesn't exist on a server somewhere. All right, we're not talking about enterprise reporting. We're talking about, I have some data, I want to print it out, or I want to show it to the user. PDF format is supported, HTML format is supported. All the great features you'd expect from a reporting engine, drop dead simple, and the best part, it's not going to break the bank. They have a great licensing scheme that's easy to deal with. So check it out at www.datadynamics.com. Now let's get back to our show.
my God, to be so old. I know. Nothing I can do but let it go and wait.
I love that song, man.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, very cool.
Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
I wish we'd recorded some of our other stuff before I came out, so we'd have more than 2 of my songs to play. But
yeah, that's okay. Good stuff. We'll hear some more, I'm sure. Well, Bob, we have a caller on the line. His name is Michael Dove, calling from the University of Iowa, and he has a question for you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I would just, you were talking, Bob, about outsourcing and then working yourself out of a job. I ended up doing that back in '99 with good old Y2K, and just recently I finally got myself back into a position where I'm earning what I was back then. And it's just, the industry nowadays is so tough. Do you see any of it coming back to us at all?
Well, what do you mean by coming back?
Well, with all the outsourcing stuff going to India and possibly China, do you see any of it coming back in a circle saying, well, these guys aren't doing so well, let's get back to some of these good American coders?
You mean, is it going to ever be like it was?
I don't really see it ever being like it was, but is there any hope for improvement?
Well, there's always hope. I mean, hope's part of being alive. I guess the question I'm sort of asking, Michael, by the way, are you out there in Iowa City?
Yeah.
Oh, man, wonderful place on the planet. Wonderful place on the planet. What do you mean about coming back? I mean, will you be able to make the sort of money you were making before?
Yeah, are we going to have the increase in the money? Are we going to have the jobs coming back into the U.S.? I've got friends who are still looking for work, and they've been at it for 2 years.
Yeah, it's hard out there. I guess the simple answer is I don't know. Here's what I've learned. That I found out that, and the trick to living well is not to live on as much money as you can, is to live as well as much money as you can, is to live as well on as little money as you can. And I had to start really looking at the role of money in my life. And believe me, I'm not saying that I don't like money, because I like earning my place on the planet. All right? I mean, money is it's our means of exchange. It's how we do business with one another, how we survive as economic beings. However, the question is how much. It's always interesting to me when people come to me saying, "I want to make a lot of money." I go, "Cool," and then they say, "Well, how much?" And filling in a number is like a second thought. So the question I would ask you, Michael, is when you say come back, I mean, how much money do you want?
Well, because of the situation I went into, my wife and I got into some serious debt, and we're still trying to get ourselves out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming around to your point of view about money, in fact, that it's not the most important thing in the world, but it makes things easier.
Oh, it does, yeah.
Yeah, you just have to live within your means, and that's something we were not doing for a while.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, I recommend a book by a guy named, I hope I pronounce it right, Thorben Belson. It's called The Theory of the Leisure Class. He wrote it in 1899, and he is the guy that came up with the phrase conspicuous consumption. And the LA Times just did an article about him last week. I wish I'd saved it. But this idea of creating societies based on consumption and what the ramifications of that are.
Hey, that sounds familiar. Societies based on where have I seen a society based on consumption?
Yeah, right. Well, in an industrial society, the role of the citizen is to consume.
Right.
In an agrarian society, the role of the citizen was to produce. It's really what's the role of citizenship. Now, the interesting thing the question I'm still struggling with is in the information society where we really don't produce hard goods anymore. We're producing ideas. We're in the idea business. What is really the role of the citizen? I don't have an answer.
That's a good question.
I don't have an answer yet.
I just kind of locked up. The first thing I was thinking about was like Friendster and Orchid, and I thought, well, there's a place I suppose where people are coming back and consuming ideas in exchange for looking at ads, but it doesn't really. It's not going to drive anything. It's not going to.
Talking about ideas,
universe.
Bob, I've had this experience many times. Maybe you guys have too, where I get an idea. Maybe it's for a product. Maybe it's for a piece of software. Maybe it's for the application of some existing technology. Or maybe it has nothing to do with technology at all. Maybe it's just an idea about, a TV show or something I'd like to see. And I say, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd definitely be great. And I just, I'm doing this other thing now. I can't do that. And then a month later, 2 months later, there it is. And I say to myself, if I had followed through, if I had had the investment, or if I had if I cared enough to do it,
right? Yeah.
And if I had taken the risk, I would have been Netscape or Yahoo or whatever it was, because I had the idea about the same time.
So if you want a lot of reward, then you have to definitely stick your neck out.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to take a risk in order. But that's if you want to make the kind of money that we're talking
then the question
about
becomes
here.
right. Is how much becomes enough money?
And that's exactly what your point is here.
Yeah.
Try to live as frugally as possible and still have a good life. And don't define good life by the number on your paycheck.
Right. So, and the other interesting thing that you just brought up, Carl, that I want to comment on is actually the role of consumption and scarcity, which Microsoft sort of destroyed that idea pretty completely. And it'll take me about a minute to explain the idea, and I hope you can bear with me. In an industrial society, consumption materials are finite. So, for example, let's take our friend oil, right? There's only so much oil on the planet.
Right.
So when you get the first oil is the cheap oil, okay? And then as you got to start drilling deeper, the price goes up, the price goes up. It just costs more to get the product. Well, that's hard goods in industry. Information works completely differently. And
sure.
Again, our friends at Microsoft have taught us that. The most expensive copy of VB.net was copy number 1. That cost like $1 quadrillion.
Right.
Right? Copy number 2 cost a dime.
Yeah.
So this idea of we're still looking at scarcity, like there's not going to be enough, and that's really built into, I think, our cultural fabric. The Europeans, in my experience, got over it a long time ago. They realized they used up all the forests.
Right.
So when you go into a bathroom in France, the water heater is instantaneous. You don't heat water as a way of life. You heat water as a way of use.
Right.
Here we just heat water because we feel like it.
Right.
Because there's just more. There's more forest out there, right?
Right.
Well, now we're getting the interesting idea, which we're seeing now. I'm really sort of looking at the OPEC. What's going on with OPEC is what's going to happen during this cutback. Nobody here. We were talking the other night, Carl. You guys probably don't remember 72 and 73.
No, I do. I do actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in '67, the year Sgt. Pepper's came out.
Yeah, I remember owning a car during those years.
And I love to bring that up to my friends who are 50 and older. They
okay,
say,
cool.
Just to make them feel old,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born.
There you go. So going back, I think Mike is bringing up an interesting thing, this anxiety of what's to become of us. I share it. I do. I'm not going to lie. What happens when there's nobody left to pay us? What do we do?
Well, the other thing that I wanted to add is that it isn't just us. We aren't the only ones who are worrying about it, right? I mean, there's also accountants and insurance salespeople and radiologists and architects and other people who are wondering the exact same thing that Mike's wondering. So it's not like coders have been singled out.
No.
Right.
The ticket agent at Northwest was very upset. I remember going to get on a ticket before they put in the automatic boarding pass dispenser, right? And she was really freaked out. She said, "I'm not going to have a job," And I said, "Well, maybe you'll do something better." And that thought never occurred to her.
Yeah, I looked at those machines. I thought the same thing. I thought, man, this is convenient, and somebody somewhere is probably out of a job for it.
Now, Rory, we were talking the other day about you have a more, I guess you would call a positive outlook on the future in terms of the economy. And it's just that our role that is changing, and we just have been changing so fast that we haven't learned to adapt to it. And there are always going to be jobs. The question is, what is the job going to be? The job used to be, building forms with buttons on them so that our bosses could push them and make money. And now those jobs are, kind of boring to the programmers that are here, and a lot of them have been shipped away. So the jobs that are remaining are more like architecture, security, kind of specialized programming, consulting, that kind of thing. And, so eventually the technology is going to get so sophisticated, and we were talking about this on the blogs too. Eventually the technology is going to get so sophisticated so that the guy who pushes the buttons, the Charlemagne, right, as Bob mentions, he doesn't have to have his scribes. He's got a machine that he can just push the button or tell it what he wants, and it just goes and does it.
That of course, is a ways off. But first, we're going to see that the architecting jobs and the security jobs are just as shippable as anything else. I mean, there's going to be the point where we say, here are our business requirements. Now give us our infrastructure, and it'll just simply be delivered.
I guess I have two models for the future, and every day I flip back and forth. And my one model is the Jetsons, and the other model is Star Trek.
Right.
Or what about Mad Max? You kind of left that out.
That's not one of my models.
I knew you were going to bring up Star Trek.
Yeah, and the reason, let me elaborate a minute. In Jetsons, it's like, George has, the spaceship, and Judy has, the buttonizer. I mean, Jane has the buttonizer and the robots, and and the kid has his, electronic robot dog and stuff. But all the problems are the same. The scenarios is the same. The technology hasn't changed anything.
Yeah, it's the 50s of the future.
Yeah, Mr. Spacely is still dumping on George.
Right.
Elroy is still dissing Mom.
Hey,
and Judy's looking for boys.
Want to help me with my homework, Dad?
Yeah. Well, that's Jetsons. Now you got the Star Trek model. Right, yeah. And now, but on the Star Trek model, I remember something very profound that Picard said. I was like really blown out the door when he said it. He said, in the past we were concerned with material acquisition. Now, because we can make everything we want automatically, we're only concerned with making ourselves better.
This is exactly what we were talking about.
And what we were saying is that we're caught in a transitionary period where we kind of all get screwed, and we hope that in about 100 years, the world is a much better place.
Right, so robots mining the ore, bringing it to the smelting pots, making and forming and
building their own infrastructure to support the humans so that we can just basically make life better for ourselves.
So, but do you think that you have the George, the time machine kind of attitude where you think that eventually we're going to just become so non-working and, that we're going to just basically stop caring about all of that culture and all of that, the culture that accompanied the technology and the work that made our lives rich? Are we just going to are we going to stop reading? Are we just going to sit around and wait for somebody to tell us what to think and what to do? Are we there now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I'm just giving lines, out of my consciousness. I think, there was a line from when the old Soviet Union was, in existence. You see, in the old Soviet Union, they threw, the poets in jail. Here, we just ignore them.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question is, really have things change that much. You do bring up an interesting point, though. There is a third factor I've been thinking about, and that's what Bill Joy's been thinking about. And I wish I could have Bill Joy over for dinner and talk to him about it. But he wrote an article in Wired, a very long article called "Why the Future Doesn't Need Us," and his position is that basically we've created another form of consciousness, machine consciousness. And Kurzweil is
yes, I'm reading his book right now, The Age of Spiritual Machines.
You got it. Yeah, that basically machine intelligence is the next step in evolution. That's what Kurzweil's saying.
Right.
So there's this whole other stuff. So then, does it really become the Matrix stuff, where we're really here just food for the machines? Now, I don't know. And the question is it knowable? Would we ever really know?
I think we would have to allow that to happen. We would have to make that part of the programming in order for it to work. We would have to allow it.
You'd have to enable it, because it's not going to just sprout up out of the ground and happen on its own accord.
Right, or we could take Douglas Adams' position too. It's been that way all along. We're really the guys that make the water warm for the dolphins. Which Douglas, I remember him saying that at PDC. I mean, it was just I was blowing out the door when he said that.
Yeah.
I think I think the trick here is paying attention. There is some serious stuff going on in the world. I think, and Carl, from our discussions, you've been experiencing. Remember, you told me that more people are taking your courses online now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
than face to face. Right.
I had this class this week. I had 4 people remotely and 1 person in the class.
Right.
Oh, wow.
My daughter, my lovely oldest daughter, Genevieve, goes to, if Michael's listening, goes to Iowa State, and she takes half her classes online.
Yeah.
And when I was in college, I took none of my classes online.
Right.
In my college, nobody had a PC. I'm giving my age away here. So now it really, the interesting thing isn't about distance learning or computer-based training or any of that stuff.
Right.
The interesting thing for me is the parceling of human attention.
Mm.
And what does getting a real teacher in real time really become something that becomes even more elite than it is now?
Yeah.
I mean, at the college level, it always, when Henry Kissinger was teaching, you got maybe his third TA 3 doors down the left, to get to talk to.
Right.
So that's always been there, but now is it more prevalent?
Right. Well, we're going to have to take a break right now and do a little segment on the show that Rory and I like to call the Linux Vulnerability of the Week.
Hello, Mr. Bull. Let's you and me fight.
And just to introduce the segment, this is something that we like to do, not to pick on Linux, but just to give Linux vulnerabilities equal time, because there are those zealots out there that argue that Windows crashes and Linux does not. And if you don't believe me, just listen to last week's show, the week before that, rather, the show with Marcus Egger. And so to refute that claim, we like to read a vulnerability that is posted about Linux or some Linux product every week. And this one comes from linuxsecurity.com advisories. In Gen 2 Linux Security Advisory, Severity High, title, New Automake Symbolic Link Vulnerability, dated April 8th, 2004. The synopsis, Automake may be vulnerable to a symbolic link attack, which may allow an attacker to modify data or elevate their privileges. Some background information. Automake is a tool for automatically generating makefile.in files, which is often used in conjunction with AutoConf and other GNU or GNU auto tools to ease portability among applications. It also provides a standardized and light way of writing complex makefiles through the use of many built-in macros. Automake may be vulnerable to a symbolic link attack, which may allow an attacker to modify data or escalate their privileges. This is due to the insecure way Automake creates directories during compilation. An attacker may be able to create symbolic links in the place of files, and those are sort of like shortcuts, except they work. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Contained in the affected directories, which may potentially lead to elevated privileges due to modification of the data. An attacker may be able to use this vulnerability to modify data in an unauthorized fashion or elevate their privileges. There is no workaround known for it. The resolution is to upgrade to version 1.8 or 3, 1.8.3 or later, and that, my friends, is the Linux Vulnerability of the Week.
Mr. Bull. Let's you and me fight.
So, now we've had our fun, and it all seems very shallow compared to what we're talking about today, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, that was the point initially, is to make it sound shallow, but it really sounds extra shallow today.
Oh, I don't think so. I think, no, not at all. I mean, wow, coding is like wonderful stuff. I mean, getting in there, and even doing, the curly bracket, no semicolon argument, that's fun stuff.
Yeah, sure. It's all fun.
When you're in the zone, you're in the zone, you
Right.
know?
Well, it's like bar talk for coders.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's what you yell at each other while you're throwing peanuts at the other guy. I mean,
Yeah.
it is fun stuff. It is fun stuff. It's the stuff where you just talk yourself in circles. And you're not getting anywhere, but you're really enjoying yourself. So
Would you,
Right.
you mean the syntax talk or the semantics talk?
either one, everything.
Either one, yeah.
Curly braces versus
Yeah.
blah blah. Yeah.
Cost.
Yeah, but-
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, it is. I mean, that's how really. I think sometimes you'd be surprised how really important ideas generate. I mean, what you're doing now, what you guys are doing now, is an incredibly important idea.
Well, thank you.
It is because
Did the
now we're
sponsors
really
hear
saying,
that?
What?
Yeah, did the sponsors
Yeah.
hear that? That's right.
Yeah, I mean, here's another little diatribical fact. I don't even know if that's a word, but really, 5 media companies control all the media we get to see,
Sure.
and they're owned by other 5 companies that make like all the transport. Everything we need to know about now is probably in Rollerball, if you've ever seen that movie. The 5 companies own it, but with the cheapness of technology and the fact that, and I talk about this in the book too, and I think in Rafael when he's praying to pass the certification exam, about that everything's cheap now. All you need is brains.
Yeah, that's all.
And we've got the cheap equipment,
Yeah.
so we were able to get started there.
Yeah, think of what you can buy for $500 now.
Right, and you can rent your brains too, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, yeah. So now the field becomes
consultant.
level. I'm always sort of interested. The new argument I'm interested about electronic voting.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's coming up now, and I've always been quizzical about why we can't vote directly. Like, I mean, I'm sort of a free for all here. Like, I want to vote on all those bills that
Well, I think
the Senate's
the
doing.
best argument I've heard is that you think dimpled chads and shady counting is a problem. At least you can see it happening.
Yeah.
Here you have nanoterrorism on a electronic scale. On
Right.
an electronic scale that nobody could go completely undetected.
Right.
And again, this is adding fuel to the argument that you make that the programmers are really in charge here.
Right. Or to use Joy's thing, it's really some other machine now is controlling our electoral process.
Right.
Everybody.
Well, we've got a caller on the line here,
Cool.
Cos Callis from Okarch, Oklahoma, and Cos, you're going to have to correct me on my pronunciation, but you have a question for Bob?
Well, just kind of a comment to follow up on one of the things that Mike, I think was the caller earlier, was talking about. He said had worked himself out of a job in the Y2K era, and one of the things that I think that developers need to stay in mind of, and I think anybody probably listening to this show does this already, but when we talk to other folks, we need to keep it in mind, is that by staying on the cutting edge and staying on the forward edge of technology is one of the best ways to secure our job positions.
So, that's assuming there are jobs there in the first place.
There are always going to be jobs there. There are always going to be people wanting things to be done. The question is, are we going to be the ones doing it, or are the folks over in India, China, or wherever going to be doing it?
Well, the other issue, though, isn't just getting new jobs, but in making sure that you're still valuable to your employer.
Well,
your job is less likely to disappear if you are still producing value for your employer, right?
Absolutely. That's
and that's the point I was making at the beginning of the show.
If you're constantly bettering yourself and learning new things, then although someday your job might eventually disappear, you can at least, lessen the likelihood of it just taking off tomorrow.
Well,
it takes work to do that.
The job that you did 2 years ago is going to disappear. I mean, think about this. In about 2 years, .NET disappears.
Right, it becomes Windows.
It becomes WinFX. And so are you still going to be doing .NET Rocks? Or are you going to change it to WinFX Rocks or something else?
We actually posed that question to Microsoft. It's always going to be called .NET Rocks.
Yeah. But when .NET becomes passé technology, you sure you're not going to want to change it?
.NET is managed code as we know it, and Windows programming is never going to become a passé technology. We will probably continue to call the show .NET Rocks, although I can't read the future. But
we'll just pick the best buzzword.
With, Carl and Rory.
I think what we call the show is a very minor part of the show itself.
The way we do it actually is we get our sponsors together in a room and we look at them. We just say words and we see how they react. If their eyes light up and they smile, then we use that. So if it's going to be like orange juice rocks, for example, if that's what they like, hey, we like that.
But that's what's
Pig milk rocks.
That's what's going to attract your listeners, though. Also,
sure.
Who cares if we have listeners if we got sponsors?
Having listeners is what's going to attract sponsors, though.
This guy has
Don't
no sense
try
of humor.
your strange, shifty logic on me.
Yeah.
We can't put anything past you, Kaz.
Well, I try to be sharp.
No, it's true though. Yeah.
But,
I have a comment to the caller about, and it comes from, I'm thinking about a Steve Jobs interview I read back in Wired a while ago, and he said, the really amazing thing about very creative, desirable people isn't so much that they can do a lot in terms of being able to turn screws and make the widgets work, but that they have the amazing ability to connect the dots.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the question, it goes back, I struggle with, and this is really my thesis, is this whole idea of syntax versus semantics.
Right.
In other words, how your code works and what your code means. And I think what we've done, the stress is enormous. The rate of change now, doctors have it good. They have the same model to work with for the last 10 billion years, We're always having to change here, everything. But we spend so much time on the syntax that in myself too, I have to actually make conscious decision to get outside of the syntax, to understand the role of my discipline, my profession. I belong to a discipline, a profession that actually goes back thousands of years, and understanding what its position within the culture is. So going back to what Rory says, is what I try to focus on. Yeah, we all need an employer, and it's taken me a while to get used to that. Coders by nature probably just hate their employers. They're built that way, or else we couldn't code. But it's a question becomes, who becomes our employer? Is it our civilization, or is it our corporation?
Well, Joseph Campbell said he wrote this book, one of his many books, was called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which became the basis of Star Wars for George Lucas. And he spent his life doing comparative mythology. And, one of his fundamental questions when he did his interview, The Power of Myth with Bill Moyers on PBS, which is awesome, and I recommend you check that out, was, your relationship to a system. And he has had many opportunities in his life to submit to a system. And this is sort of what, the Star Wars thing is all about, is the Empire is the system. And when Vader takes his mask off at the end of Return of the Jedi, he's not even a human being anymore. He's just this crumpled, rumpled, old, shriveled up, man who has no autonomy left and who has no soul. But Campbell said that he has had many opportunities to go, write this book or teach this thing or, become president of this company or that company, and he would not submit. And he feels that that's the role of the hero, or one of the many roles of the hero, is to not submit, to be a maverick, to do your own thing and to live by your own calling. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, we've done with the show and my company and Franklin's Net, we've sort of separated ourselves from, the sort of mainstream consulting and training and all this kind of stuff. And I can pretty much do my own thing. And, that didn't happen by accident. There was a deliberate choice for me to do that.
The trick is to get somebody to help you feed your family for doing your thing.
Well, that's it, is to follow your bliss and do the thing that you love and do something that you can afford to do.
Right. You live in Oklahoma, right?
Right.
Western, eastern Oklahoma?
Pretty much dead center.
Dead center. Yeah, here's whenever people talk to me about feeding their family, which believe me, I've had a family and I struggle every day feeding, my family still. But I think about, here you go, you get these people in like New York, right? Farmers in New York, and they get in this this wagon, and they go out they don't even know where they're going. They don't even know where they're going, and they go out and they hit this thing called the Midwestern winter. Now, I don't know Oklahoma that well at all, but I do know the northern Midwest. And if you want to meet your maker, live through a winter there.
Absolutely.
And so when I think about feeding my family, those words reverberate. Think of what that guy had to do to feed his family.
Right.
And to survive on day to day. So here we are. Our biggest problem is, really, what supermarket are we going to today? And will if worse comes to worse, will our line of credit be able to make it through the swipe?
Right. Yeah, Larry Miller, the comedian, says, my parents said, back in my day, we had to work for everything. We had to grow the food. We had to pump the water. And he says, if I go to the bank and the grocery store in the same day, I need a nap.
Right.
He says, wait a minute. Yep. He says, this is the only country in the world where we can get on the phone and pick up the phone and say, I'm hungry. And they say, we'll be right over.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough. If it's not here in 30 minutes, I'm not paying.
Right. That's not good enough. Yeah. And and even people now, I'm still, think about when we remember BASIC?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Remember, having... Right, those go-to statements, right?
Right.
And we made wonderful code under that.
Sure.
We made code.
We made it work.
Yeah, we made it work. So, again, the syntax is cool. It's always nice to learn another language and another methodology and another framework. Because
it's great when we have one less line of code we have to write.
But it's not the big picture,
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Or it is the big picture, too. It becomes interesting.
The syntax isn't the big picture.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but... I think, in the book, I do talk, this is about coding slim code. I do offer a solution. I've thought through the problem, and I've really thought about, and there's a reason why the Menno ships with it, and it really is about how do we train physicians. Right. And in the dialogue, they say, do we send them to the teachers, or do we send them to the physicians? And what we've done, as a profession is we've sort of let other people take care of it for us. And basically they've been, other people, you know who those guys are, and they're, yes, and they've done it, I guess, well to this point, but most code doesn't ship. Most code doesn't ship, guys.
Right.
So I guess they've done a great job. Because we certainly haven't. So in the book we talk about it, and the first thing is taking responsibility for our profession. And it's our profession.
I like this the segment in the book, and I'll just read this quick, where it's in that same chapter, 26, where Ajita is doing the keynote thing, and she uses the question. What is it called? The green button and the red button, the auto voter.
Oh, the votometer.
Votometer. That's
the votometer. Yeah. She's
basically got this room full of people, and she's doing the keynote, and everybody has a red button and a green button, and she says, first. I want, before I start, I'm going to ask you some questions, and after I ask you a question, please answer it using the votometer. She says, and she asks these series of questions. And Bob, are these real numbers?
Yes, actually, well, they could be. You can go out to the Coding Slave site and take that quiz.
Okay.
It is on the site.
But they are real numbers. You got these from?
No, I made them up.
Oh, okay.
But I made them up. All right, nobody will let me at 11,000 people. Maybe after this, I'll get to do it. We'll get to take the votometer.
We'll cut that out, right? No.
Yeah, and we'll just go through the country giving the quiz, and we'll sell it as market research material.
Right.
And, there you go. I hope everybody's listening.
But these questions reverberate. For anybody who's reading it, you can obviously see what you're getting at here. And her question number one is, do you labor in an environment where the primary source of light is fluorescent? Yes, 10,185. No, 98. Are you overweight due to lack of exercise and movement? Yes, 9,942. No, 910. I could definitely fall into that category. And I'd probably crush somebody, too, if I fell. But does your behind hurt from sitting in a chair all day? Yes, about 9,000. No, 894. Do you talk to yourself and others with whom you work as resources? Do you talk about yourself and the others with whom you work as resources?
I love that one.
Ooh.
I love that one. And people, here's a big hint. If you want your managers and your bosses and their bosses to think of you as something that can be easily shipped abroad, then by all means, don't refer to each other as people, but call each other resources. Because that makes you a piece of paper that can be put in an envelope and mailed to another country.
So
All right?
scary.
And,
so
and
scary.
also used up. We use
Right.
up resources.
Exactly.
Let me just read. I won't read the answers, but some of these questions are great. Are you forced to create a lame system about which you haven't any input on requirements or design that will be associated with you forever? Have you
forced to sign the code in the comments? Yeah.
Have you avoided speaking to a client or end user in the last 5 years? Do you find yourself writing code that has been written 1,000 times before just to provide a trace amount of intellectual stimulation? Do you wear jeans to work on Friday only? Number 9, do you have frequent fantasies about intimate human contact, physical and otherwise, within your work environment, yet in reality have very little or none at all? Number 10, do you work in a cube that others have made for you?
I love that. The others, like the cube fairies. I do love that, though.
Number
that
11,
others have made for you.
are you afraid of or resentful about your supervisor? Do you spend more time writing code you hate than with your loved ones? Ooh, what a great question.
Yeah, that's something.
Do you find yourself thinking that you'll get it right on the next version? Do you find yourself fearing a new technology because you don't have the time or desire to learn it? Do you have more than $1,000 in credit card debt? Are you dissatisfied with your sex life? Okay, well, these are getting a little personal. Do you find yourself fearing that if you go into a meeting and say what's really on your mind, you'll get into trouble? Are you afraid of losing your possessions? Have you ever had to change plans in order to work overtime? Do you find Dilbert funny, but know in your heart that it's really much, much worse?
Oh, no.
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
And those are on the website. You can.
Yeah, on the website, go to codingslave.com, go in, and then choose the quiz and take it.
Oh,
And-
man.
Yes,
and,
and
and you've got the stats here and everything showing how everybody else was answering. So.
Yeah, they're suspicious, but I've done them heuristically, and I'm not surprised. It's showing up. It's interesting because I show back the percentages on the website.
Bob, can we give away some books?
Yes, please. Please give away some books, and Carl, you and I can wrap up. Figure out how to ship them. Yeah, let's give away 5 books.
How many you want to allocate? And we'll.
Let's give 5.
All right, so listen up. The next 5 people that send a message through that says, I want a book through www.franklins.net/call.netrocks will receive a free copy of Coding Slave.
No, and wait, I want to get and they have to they also have to tell you the most important piece of software that they've written. In other words, if they were going to put it on their gravestone, say, I wrote this software that goes on their gravestone,
Wow.
right?
That's a good
known
question.
for
That's a
eternity.
great question.
Yes,
That is a
I
really
wrote
good
this,
question.
and I'm happy I did.
All right.
I guess I'm
Or-
not getting one of those books. My best piece of software was a tank game.
Well,
right,
That's
Dave-
all right, though.
that's all right.
Dave
That's
Salmon
cool.
just said, I want a book. Dave, you have to give us a piece of software that you wrote, your favorite, the best software.
Not your
Yeah,
favorite.
I want a
Dad.
freaking
Not your
book,
favorite.
too.
It's going on your gravestone,
Not your
guys
favorite, the one you're most proud of.
and girls. Yep.
Yeah,
The one I want on my gravestone.
right.
Can I throw something in real quick?
Sure.
Again? All right. We've got the question, do you have more than $1,000 in credit card debt? And I watched my family and I watched friends get into credit card debt and have a lot of problems with this. And I just wanted to say, here's a big tip to everybody. This is Rory's financial tip of the week, especially in a tough economy, is just don't have a credit card. I know that sometimes it
Yep.
can be tough for people, but
Don't
I
use
have a debit card. And yeah, there are times when I watch my account shrink to the point that I think, oh God, how am I going to make that quarterly tax payment, or how am I going to do this, or how am I going to do that? And that's when I definitely start to scrimp. It really keeps your financial situation on the forefront of your mind. So if you're having a hard time with work, or you're having a hard time with the economy, and you're worried about the credit card debt, then just don't have one.
I realize that's bad citizenship, Rory.
Oh, well, yeah, okay, I'm a bad American, whatever.
Well,
Not bad, man.
we
Not
have
bad
some
citizen.
winners. We have some winners. The first one is David Salmon. He says, I wrote a GC term tracker, and I'm happy I did.
What's the GC turn tracker?
Yeah, what's a GC term tracker? That doesn't make any sense to us. Michael Elsdorfer says, my best piece of software I have written was a calc.exe clone. Oh, come on, man.
That's
And
pretty
wait,
cool.
we need to get this guy on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't there? Yeah.
You just made your point through that guy. Josh Pollard says, I wrote an online ordering system for my company. Ken DeRossier says, I wrote our security module, my company's security module. And the last one, John Amick says, I wrote a knowledge base app, and I'm happy I did. It seems like, I'm happy I did it. It seems like we're getting this sentiment from the teeming millions that I don't know, maybe we're telling
Yeah,
them they're doing things wrong.
Let me comment on that. I used to teach at a college in the Midwest, and my assignment, I only gave one assignment every year, and that was just to write a piece of software that changes the world. That was it. Just write a piece of software that changes the world. And of course, the students, their jaws dropped, and they said, "This is a programming course." I said, "Yeah, it's a programming course." Now write a piece of software that changes the world. And there was this one young lady who was pretty new to programming, but what she did, well, I was just floored. And here's what she did: she understood that dog and cat overpopulation was a big problem. She used to work in a kennel that put animals to sleep.
Wow.
And she was really mortified by just how much people just didn't care about spaying and neutering their animals, about just how irresponsible it was. And she wrote a calculator. It was very good. And what all the calculator did was help people figure out what would happen if they didn't spay their animals, about how many actual offspring happened.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't rocket science programming. I mean, it didn't, do a billion transactions a nanosecond and stuff, or did it keep, the magnetic field of the Earth straight. But when you walked away from that piece of software, you were different.
Right. Yeah.
I remember that, and she was a sweetheart.
That's software that changes the world right there.
Right there. I mean, everybody thinks that, you have to, like I said, change the magnetic field of the Earth or, make NAFTA work or something.
And you have to have 50,000 lines of code in your this module and that module. It has to be highly complex.
So if we thought about .NET Rocks as a piece of software,
it is.
Then how we change the world is by converting Linux zealots to install Visual Studio 2003.
No, come on.
like Christopher Anthony, right?
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you what I think the coolest piece of software you guys publish is now, if you want to know.
Sure.
I like Carl's tunes the best.
You're so kind, man.
No, but it's true, man. I mean, here's something that computers cannot do.
Yet.
Yes.
Yet, no way. No way.
Roy's computers can do. In fact, he helped with their help. He made some of his music as well.
Wait, but look at your language. You said he made.
Sure.
Yes.
But I see a day, we're not going to be alive, but I see a day when computers do it, and not just do it, but do it better than we ever possibly could.
But if the computers do it, don't the humans who program those computers actually do it through the tool of the computer?
None of the computers are...
It's
the weird sci-fi garbage here, right? Where you start to see this time when
sentient, maybe
you have the first, you have the first sentient computer, and that's the first one you need. It can build everything else for you. It can do all the rest of the work. It can do everything, and improve on itself, and eventually you're going to have artistic, sentient computers.
Hey, Carl, before you start anything, I'd like to ask you something. Did you write your music, or did your parents write it?
Did I write?
Hey, that's an interesting question.
Awesome question, Jeff.
Oh, that's Jeff Marvin Minsky there, man.
Jeff comes out from behind the soundboard to ask the
toughie.
The toughie.
Well, what's the answer, Carl?
I think I don't know, but I'm going to claim responsibility for it.
I think simple RNA chains.
Well, then I think that
the early soup on the earth.
That whatever software ends up writing music someday, if it's possible, I think that software should take credit for the music. I think the programmer can take a little bit of credit for it, and I think that your parents can take some credit for the music that you write. But
well, we are the people our parents warned us about.
Jeff, go away! You're sounding smarter than everybody else on the show put together. All right,
that's why I stay behind the soundboard.
You got to be able to mute that guy from out here.
Yeah, well, I control you. I can make you sound really
Bob.
bad.
Well, no, nothing to be
This is
sorry
like the
about,
Wizard of Oz. Now you guys know who runs the show.
The interesting thing here really is about the role of human creativity. Here's something that machines just can't do, and human creativity is one of them. That making that dumb mistake that you learn from.
Right.
Now we can try, over and over again, but doing that for a machine is very, very hard.
And they certainly
I'm not
can't
even sure
laugh.
there's any profit in it.
Right.
So now, and what we've done, culture and civilization mean two different things to me. Well, actually, as a culture, what we've done is all those things that make, humans, we've sort of taken out of the human experience. And it's made look,
okay.
and everybody's wondering why the code doesn't ship.
Do you mean that because a lot of the things that have defined us are the things that we have done all throughout these thousands of years just to survive?
I'm speaking more essentially of the skills one needs to connect the dots. I mean, we've taken at the public school level, if indeed public school has ever been about education, that's another issue. But we're eliminating music, we're eliminating art, we're eliminating literature. That the whole idea of, and human creativity isn't
Preach on,
Dadaism.
man. Preach on.
What?
Preach on.
Oh, it isn't nihilism. Human creativity isn't about, taking buckets of paint and throwing them against the wall like Pollock. some of the best artists I know were brilliant people. Brilliant. I mean, I think of Milton Babbitt over at Princeton, who is, I have issues with his music, but it's human creativity, and the guy's the head of the mathematics department.
I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for this, but my definition of, well, I can't define it, but the kind of things that I like when I look at art, when I look at music, when I look at anything in the arts, whether it's dance or what have you, is that there's criteria, and everybody has criteria for something that is either junk or art or meaningful or not meaningful. To me, I have to get a sense that somebody put some thought and some work behind what they're doing. And that's why, people like Andy Warhol pissing on a piece of copper and hanging it up in his art gallery and selling it for $10 million just really pissed me off.
Well,
and people like John Cage, who would come out in a concert and the concert was 23 pages of nothing. And he'd sit at a piano and turn the pages during, and just count. And to let the people experience the nothingness. Do I need to pay $50 to go to a concert to have some guy not play the piano? After the first 2 minutes, I get it. You know what I mean?
Actually, I met John Cage and talked to him about that.
Okay, so he's a celebrity because of it. And
no, I want to hear his
but...
thinking behind it if you want to hear it.
Well, I understand. I think I get it. I think I get the thinking is that we spend so much time being stimulated that, that it's actually quite jarring and scary to sit in a room full of people and hear nothing. And that has more of a performance, if you will, associated with it that comes from you, not from the artist and what the artist is trying to put over. But I get that.
Can I be a jerk and backtrack a little?
Sure.
I just wanted to talk about the creativity thing for just a second. And this is really important to developers, which is why I bring it up, okay? Bob, you were talking about cutting out the arts programs and the extracurricular activities in schools and things like that, and that's kind of cutting out perspective, right? And it's cutting out those extra bits of information that you can apply to new problems in a way to be creative. I went to a talk at a Portland game developer user group by this guy Chris Crawford, who is like an industry veteran. I mean, he's been around for a long time. He shipped a lot of products, and he said something that was really interesting. He said a lot of things that actually kind of pissed me off, but one thing was really interesting. He said creativity is just the application of disparate ideas to each other from different disciplines and coming out with a whole new thing, right? It's taking that bit of perspective and coming out with something totally brand new, like genetic algorithms, right? I mean, that's some creative stuff. That's something where you're starting out with two totally different ideas, and you're mixing them to come up with a whole new solution. It's something that's not going to occur in a place where the only discipline is programming, right? You had to apply knowledge from a whole other discipline in order to make this happen. Or I guess in your case, going to Greece in order to understand what's happening in the States, getting yourself outside of that situation and seeing the way things are happening someplace else and applying those thoughts to the previous place, taking two different ideas and squashing them together to come up with something creative. So cutting out those programs is definitely a way of cutting out perspective, which is a way of cutting down on creativity.
And before you respond, Bob, I want to tell people that this is the time of the show where we ask them to submit the namespace of the week. However, we did not have a namespace this week, and you are correct if you are wondering what the heck it was.
Whoops.
Well,
these things happen.
That's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask that you go to www.franklins.net/call.netrocks if you're listening live, and you tell me what namespace, what class in what namespace is used to load a picture into a picture box. So go ahead and do that now. No, and it's not system.rory.jetlag. Although you are accurate. He does have jet lag, but that's not it. And it's not nothing either. So go ahead and respond, Bob.
The response, I mean, the whole cage thing is interesting. And it's
yeah, and I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, that's fine. No, that's good. What's interesting, let me explain this. I understand why musicians make great programmers. I want to tell you why.
I want to know why.
Okay,
so.
I have my own theories.
Okay, here it comes. You got to be quiet. Okay, abstract constructs.
That's what I've said. That's exactly what I've said.
You got to be quiet.
Sorry. Okay, so I'll relax here for just a second.
Relax. Okay.
I'm just happy to agree.
I know, but I want to give the listeners an example of what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Why musically it works. First of all, as we all know, movies and software only exist in your mind. There is no word. You pick up CD, you pick up the CD of Word or Linux. There's no operating system there. It's only through experience that you actually understand the operating system of the application. Well, the same can be said of music, i.e. a melody. So you're walking down the street, and out of one window you hear a whole lot of love, right? And then you say, oh, that's Led Zeppelin, a whole lot of love. I understand that. I can recognize that. That's pattern recognition, which Peter Code talks about a lot. And then you walk down the street a little more, and then you hear this thing, Beethoven, this thing, da-da-da-da, coming out the other window. You say, oh, I know that. That's Beethoven. None of those things exist except in your mind. And because we can identify them, quantify them, and manipulate them, we become programmers. That's why we do it.
I just want to say that is so right on. If you go back and you listen to the show where Chris Els and I are hosting, we had this discussion, and that's kind of what I thought too. I didn't put it as eloquently, but
right.
But
so
along similar
my
lines.
question is, then how come? I've been in a lot of.
Well, hang on, Bob. I also have a theory about this that's not quite yours.
Okay.
And my theory is that musicians, in particular instrumentalists, and I would say piano players and guitar players, mostly guitar players, but instrumentalists that have to learn an instrument. The process of learning an instrument and practicing an instrument and practicing for a performance is very, very similar to the process of writing a piece of software. And the reason, and yes, you do deal with those abstracts, but I would go even further to say that it's a quality of being able to work very quickly go very quickly from a low level to a high level and zoom in and out. And what I mean by that is you work on your technique as an instrumentalist. You practice your scales. You practice the nuance. You practice over and over again a riff or a line until you get the technical part of it right. And then you have to zoom out and you have to play the piece. And you have to say, does that fit? Does that work? Oh, no, I have something else that I want to do here. And then you zoom in again and you work out the details. So when you're programming, you look at the overall application or the overall big picture, and then you have to zoom in on these little members, little properties, little methods, little subs, and in these little constructs where you have to do the minutia. But it's the ability to zoom in and out very quickly, I think, that makes a good guitar player, and it also makes a good programmer a good programmer.
I wanted to say,
I agree,
wait.
And it's also what you touch upon, which I really which really resonates for me is what my friend Jim McCarthy calls ship time. Now it's time to ship the product.
Right.
We know software never dies. It just comes to a point when we say it's time to ship.
Right.
And people in the performing arts really understand that. You can really see it. I'm sure you're doing a gig tonight. I'm sure at some point you're going to zoom right down.
Right.
And it's time to ship. Time to ship. Yeah. So I guess my gripe here was that I was about to say is that there's a lot of there's huge rooms of software being developed out there. Hundreds of thousands of people still in this country, everywhere, are making software. And yet, when I go to these places, and I've been in many, many, many large IT shops, and I never see a guitar. I mean, Microsoft, you see them in the younger ones in New York, at the media places. But, in down and out banking, you never see, I rarely see, I don't know never, but I rarely see any sort of musical instrument. I rarely see any place where people can go and just paint a picture or even watch a film.
Right.
And now the question about productivity. Well, somebody is willing to go and spend, $6,000 per seat to increase productivity over man hours. They hopefully on a piece of tool, right? But, how much is a box of, giving somebody an hour a day, a box of crayons and a sketch pad and saying, it's important that you go in there and do this for 30 minutes.
Right.
Help me understand the cost benefit, the lack of cost benefit there.
Well, the problem, though, is that a lot of people confuse the process with the end, right? Or with the motivation. I mean, you have people who paint by numbers, and you get these horrible clipper ships that are hanging in hotels on coasts all over the place. And then you get people who actually paint, and there's a difference, right? You get people who sit down and they can play a clarinet solo, or actually what they do is they'll just do clarinet exercises over and over and over and over again.
Translate
and
the music.
This person might be a fine person, a fine clarinetist or whatever you call him, but not necessarily a fine musician, right? And in the same way, you have people who can definitely lay out lines of code one after the other to get something to work, but you're not going to look at that code and say, well, it's aesthetically pleasing.
Why not?
Or this person cares about it.
Wait, slow down the music. Why wouldn't you look at a piece of code and saying it's aesthetically pleasing?
No, you would if the person is not just using the code as a means to get a particular job
well, I think
done.
Right? The thing is, it has to work within the construct, work well with the other players in the software. You know, it has to work together.
Right. Well, as we all know from playing in improvisational bands, that's built in.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily with code.
Sure.
And so,
sure.
well, okay, but if we're playing in A flat and you're playing in A on the sax, you know, there's a problem there.
Right, but that's a very small part of the music. That's tonal music, and you sort of have rules going in. I mean, when we pick a platform, if we say, okay, we're doing .NET,
well, I think we've beat the metaphor to death.
Well, I just want to say, what I'm saying is that we have people who paint by numbers, and we have artists, and they're completely different. We have people who can sit down and do clarinet exercises, and we have people who can actually produce music.
I emphatically disagree. Mm-hmm. Every human being on the face of the earth is creative and has the potential for unlimited creativity. And here's my little line. People come to me, I've done this when they say, I'm not creative. I just not. And I say, have you ever had kids?
Right.
They say, yeah. I said, well, help me understand if there's nothing more creative than making a kid.
Yeah.
You know? And they look up at me like, oh, man, that counts?
Right.
You know?
I totally agree with you. I don't think that, you know, being a groovy person, you know, means that you're not an artist or whatever. Let me scratch that. I think that there's a lot of people who are good at it and therefore, you know, tend to look down on the people who aren't good at it.
Right. And that goes back to what the culture we've built.
Artistic elitism.
That's one thing I want to say. I'm not an elitist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I wasn't implying that Rory was
especially
an elitist.
Since my music is sloppy and all over the place. But yeah, I'm definitely not an elitist. I just see the world one way.
But you can tell when something is good and when it isn't. I mean, to your ears, and it's aesthetically pleasing, and it's not. Well, I just want to tell people that nobody got the actual class. Nobody got the class. Well, one person got the class right, but it was a guy who won before. So I'm going to give you a second chance, and I'll explain it a little better this time. The class I'm looking for is the class that's used to load a graphics file, like a GIF file or a JPEG file, from the disk and put it in a picture box. The one that actually has the load property on it. All right, do I have to spell it out for you? So there you go. If the next person to hit me with that answer on the website is going to win a box of something. They're going to win a box of
Crayon.
Windows Server 2003 Standard Edition. And they can't have one before. That's also the other stipulation.
So we're obviously winding down. Bob, you're going to be at Tech Ed, right?
Yeah, I'll be down there.
I just want to say, I don't want to sound like a stalker, but I'm going to seek you out and absolutely have a conversation with you, unless you're too busy.
Well, no, I plan to be very little busy. I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to make friends these days.
Yeah.
I just want to say know how to do code.
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed this interview, and you're somebody that I'd love to sit down and just have a whatever you drink, orange juice, Mad Dog, turpentine. I don't know. I mean, it's
we'll
not my
hook up.
business.
We'll definitely spend time together. Yeah, and if not, LA's not that far away either, man. There's lots of stuff happening up here.
Sure.
This really is everything they've said about it.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yep. Huh. Well, it looks like we don't have a winner. I can't spell it out any more plainly than that. Nobody's hitting me with the right. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, we do have a winner. It's Chris Cood. Chris Coot, and the winning class is System Drawing Bitmap. Yeah, Chris, you won.
Bravo.
And that's after about 25 wrong answers. So, Chris, you should feel proud of yourself. One other guy got it right, of course, before you did, but he had won before. So there you go. Well,
we
Bob,
don't like repeat winners around here.
So, Bob, do you have any last-minute words of wisdom that you want to impart on our listening audience before we wrap it up?
Yes, I do. Here it is. In terms of being an American coder, the greatest asset we have is our creativity.
Hear, hear.
Is our creativity. We're the best at it. I mean, take a look around the world and go take a look at what other people produce and what we produce. And if you look at the remaining industries really left in this country are entertainment and defense. And entertainment is all about creativity.
Yes, it is.
So be more creative. That's my
defense is all
word.
about destructivity. So on behalf of myself and Rory and the listening public, Bob, I want to thank you very much for coming on .NET Rocks and talking about Coding Slave. What a great book. And
yeah, buy the book, you freeloaders.
Yeah, right.
It's awesome. Well, we'll see you later, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, later.
Bye-bye.